Jake reached for the small device clipped to his belt. It was a portable holographic projector, standard equipment for human diplomats. His hands shook slightly as he activated it. The device hummed to life and cast a blue light into the air above his head. The first image that appeared made several aliens gasp. It was a double helix, the twisted ladder shape of DNA. But this was not just any genetic code. It was a comparison between human and Neanderthal genetics, with differences highlighted in bright colors. "This is the genetic code of both species," Jake said, pointing to the floating image. Humans and Neanderthals shared most of their DNA, but there were important differences. We can see these differences even in bones that are 40,000 years old. Director Vexthera leaned forward, her 6 arms reaching toward the hologram as if she wanted to touch it. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "Genetic material breaks down into basic elements after a few thousand years. Our own quantum scanners cannot read DNA older than 10,000 years. Jake changed the image. Now it showed a skull rotating slowly in the blue light. Half of it was colored white, half was colored red. The white half is a modern human skull, he explained. The red half is Neanderthal. Look at the differences. The aliens stared in fascination. The Neanderthal skull was larger and longer. The forehead sloped back more. The jaw was bigger and stronger. But it was clearly the skull of an intelligent being. Ambassador Kyleth made a soft musical sound. "The bone structure shows high intelligence," she said, her crystal formations glowing brighter. "The brain case is actually larger than yours. These beings were not primitive." "Exactly," Jake said. He felt more confident now. They were not less intelligent than humans. They were just different. They made sophisticated tools, they controlled fire. They cared for their sick and elderly. They buried their dead with ceremony. Commander Zeph of the aquatic domains made a bubbling sound of amazement. "You learned all of this from old bones?" he asked through the translator. Jake nodded and changed the image again. This time it showed a cave wall covered in handprints and simple drawings. "This is art made by Neanderthals over 50,000 years ago," he said. "They mixed pigments from minerals and plants. They painted animals' hands and abstract symbols. They had culture and creativity." The synthetic collective's lights flashed rapidly. "Data correlation request," it said in its mechanical voice. If these beings were intelligent and creative, why did they become extinct? What catastrophe eliminated them? Jake took a deep breath. This was the part that would really shock them. "There was no catastrophe," he said quietly. "No war, no plague, no natural disaster. They went extinct through something else entirely." General Thok growled low in his throat. "Explain," he demanded. Jake activated his communicator. "Dr. Peterson, are you ready?" A new hologram appeared next to Jake. It was the image of a middle-aged human woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She wore the uniform of Earth's Scientific Council. "Hello, everyone," Dr. Lily Peterson said through the hologram. "I am Earth's lead xenoanthropologist. I have spent my entire career studying human origins and the species that came before us." Several aliens made sounds of surprise. They were not used to seeing remote communications during formal assemblies. Dr. Peterson continued. "What Jake is telling you is completely true. We have fossil evidence from thousands of Neanderthal individuals. We have studied their DNA, their tools, their living sites, and their burial grounds. We know more about this extinct species than most of you know about your own ancestors." She gestured, and the hologram changed to show a timeline. Neanderthals and modern humans both evolved from earlier ancestors. We shared the same continent for thousands of years. During that time, something remarkable happened. The timeline showed 2 colored lines that started apart and gradually moved closer together. Where they touched, the colors blended. "We intermarried," Dr. Peterson said simply. "Humans and Neanderthals had children together. Those children survived and had more children. Slowly, over thousands of years, the 2 species became one. The chamber erupted in noise again. This time it was not confusion or disbelief. It was pure astonishment. Director Vexthera's 6 arms moved in complex patterns that Jake now recognized as extreme agitation. "You are saying," she said slowly, "that extinction occurred through peaceful integration? Not conquest, not disease, not environmental collapse, but through voluntary genetic mixing?" "That is exactly what we are saying," Dr. Peterson replied. "Modern humans carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA. Every human alive today has Neanderthal ancestors. They did not die out, they became part of us." Jake watched the faces around him change. Where there had been doubt and confusion, he now saw something like awe. These were beings who had seen thousands of species die through violence or disaster. The idea of extinction through love was completely foreign to them. Ambassador Kyleth's crystal formations were glowing so brightly that other aliens had to shield their eyes. "This is unprecedented in galactic history," she said, her voice full of wonder. "We have records of over 12,000 extinct species. Every single one died through conflict, disease, accident, or environmental failure. None ever chose integration over survival as separate peoples." The Vorthak representative clicked his mandibles in a rhythm that Jake did not recognize. Through the translator, his words came out thoughtful and slow. "The implications are staggering," he said. "Your species did not just study an extinct civilization. You absorbed it, preserved it, and carry it forward in your very bodies." Dr. Peterson nodded. "We also preserve their memory in other ways," she said. The hologram changed to show museum displays, scientific papers, and artistic reconstructions. We built museums dedicated to them. We write books about their lives. We make movies showing how they lived. We teach our children about them in schools. Commander Zeph made a sound like waves crashing on rocks. "You honor the extinct by becoming them," he said with something like reverence in his translated voice. Jake felt a warmth in his chest. "We honor them by remembering them," he corrected gently. "By learning from them. By carrying their genes and their memory into the future. The Neanderthals live on in every human child that is born." General Thok had been quiet for a long time. Now he stood up, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. "Human Morrison," he said in a voice much softer than his usual growl, "your species has shown us something we thought impossible. You have turned extinction into transformation." The synthetic collective's lights pulsed in a pattern Jake had never seen before. "Philosophical paradigm shift detected," it announced. "Previous models of species termination require revision. Human model suggests extinction may be choice rather than inevitability." Director Vexithera raised all 6 arms in a gesture of formal acknowledgement. "The Council recognizes the addition of Neanderthals to the Extinction Registry," she said formally. "But more than that, we recognize that humanity has introduced a completely new understanding of what extinction means." Jake felt tears forming in his eyes. He had come here just to honor his extinct cousins. He had not expected to change the way an entire galaxy thought about death and memory. The great chamber had become completely silent. Jake could hear the soft humming of the translation devices and the distant sound of the space station's engines. Every alien in the room seemed to be thinking deeply about what they had just learned. Finally, Commander Zeph of the Aquatic Domains broke the silence. His voice came through the translator as soft as gentle waves. "Human Morrison," he said, "you are telling us that your species can study extinct beings so completely that you know their thoughts, their feelings, their daily lives. You do this using only old bones and broken tools." Jake nodded. "We do more than study them," he said. "We become them in our imaginations. We try to see the world through their eyes. We want to understand what it felt like to be them." Dr. Peterson's hologram gestured toward a new image. It showed a Neanderthal family sitting around a fire. The adults were making tools while children played nearby. The scene looked so real that several aliens leaned forward to get a better look. "This reconstruction is based on archaeological evidence from a site in France," Dr. Peterson explained. "We found the remains of 9 individuals in one cave. From studying their bones, their teeth, and their tools, we can tell you their ages, their relationships, their health, and even what they ate for their last meal." The Zentari ambassador, Kyleth, made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "The detail is extraordinary," she said, her crystal formations pulsing with different colors. "But how can you know what they felt or thought?" "Emotions and thoughts do not preserve in bone," Jake smiled. "We study their behavior," he said. "We found graves where Neanderthals buried their dead with flowers and tools. This tells us they believed in an afterlife. We found evidence that they cared for disabled members of their groups. One skeleton shows a man who lived for years after losing his arm. His people fed him and protected him even though he could not hunt." General Thok made a rumbling sound deep in his chest. "They showed mercy to the weak," he said, and Jake could hear respect in the translated words. "Among the Brutari, only the strong survive. But these Neanderthals chose to help those who could not help themselves." "That is exactly right," Dr. Peterson said. "We also found evidence of their art and music. They made jewelry from shells and feathers. They painted caves with pictures that told stories. They carved flutes from bird bones and played music around their fires. The synthetic collective's lights began flashing in complex patterns. Data synthesis complete, it announced. Human archaeological methods exceed all known galactic standards. Conclusion. Human species possesses unique ability to resurrect extinct civilizations through deductive analysis. Director Vexithera had been quiet for a long time, her 6 arms moving in slow, thoughtful patterns. Now she spoke, and her voice carried wonder. In all our centuries of galactic cooperation, she said, we have accepted that extinction means total loss. When a species dies, their knowledge, their culture, their unique way of seeing the universe dies with them. But you humans have shown us that this is not true. Jake felt his heart racing. He was beginning to understand that this moment was bigger than just honoring the Neanderthals. He was changing the way the entire galaxy thought about death and memory. Ambassador Kyleth stood up, her crystal skin catching the light and throwing rainbows across the walls. Human Morrison, she said formally. On behalf of the Zentari Collective, I request permission to study your archaeological methods. We have 13 extinct species in our own history. If your techniques could help us learn more about them, the Vorthak Second Hive would also like to learn, added the insect-like representative. We lost the first hive to the quantum plague, but we preserved some of their remains. Perhaps your methods could help us understand what they were thinking in their final days. Commander Zeph made excited bubbling sounds. The aquatic domains have 3 extinct cousin species. We always wondered what their songs sounded like. Could human methods reconstruct their music from fossilized vocal structures? Jake looked around the chamber in amazement. What had started as a simple addition to an extinction list was becoming something much larger. These ancient advanced civilizations were asking humans, the newest members of the galactic community, to teach them about their own past. Dr. Peterson seemed equally surprised. We would be honored to share our knowledge, she said through the hologram. But you must understand our methods take time and patience. Sometimes we work for years to learn small details about how extinct people lived. Time we have, Director Vexithera said. The galaxy has existed for billions of years. If human methods can bring back even fragments of lost civilizations, then time is not important. General Thok stepped forward, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. There is something else, he said, his voice unusually thoughtful. The humans have shown us that extinction does not have to mean total death. If species can live on in memory, in knowledge, in honor, then perhaps we have been thinking about survival wrong. The chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as aliens discussed this idea with their neighbors. Jake could hear dozens of different languages mixing together, creating a sound like a strange musical symphony. The synthetic collective spoke again, its mechanical voice cutting through the noise. Philosophical revolution detected, it announced. Human model suggests memory preservation may be equivalent to species continuation. Previous definitions of extinction require complete revision. Jake felt tears in his eyes as he looked around the great chamber. 3 days ago, these beings had been telling sad stories about lost civilizations. Now they were talking about hope, about bringing the dead back to life through knowledge and respect. Dr. Peterson's hologram flickered slightly as she prepared to sign off. Before I go, she said, I want to show you one more thing. The image changed to show a DNA chart with many colored lines. This is the genetic diversity of modern humans. We carry genes not just from Neanderthals, but from other extinct human species too. Denisovans, Heidelbergensis, and others we are still discovering. Your entire species is a living memorial, Ambassador Kyleth whispered, her voice full of awe. Yes, Jake said quietly. We are the descendants of many peoples. Some of them died out as separate groups, but they live on in us. Every human carries the genetic legacy of multiple extinct species. Director Vexithera raised all 6 arms in a gesture of formal recognition. The Galactic Species Preservation Council hereby acknowledges that humanity has introduced a revolutionary concept to our understanding of extinction and memorial. We propose the establishment of a new department dedicated to studying these methods and applying them across the galaxy. The vote was unanimous. Every species in the chamber agreed. Jake realized that he had just accidentally created a new branch of galactic science, and Earth was going to be at the center of it. As the meeting began to break up, aliens approached Jake from all directions. They wanted to shake his hand, touch his shoulder, or perform whatever gesture of respect their species used. Each one had questions about how human archaeology worked and whether it could help study their own extinct relatives. Jake answered as many questions as he could, but his mind was spinning with the implications of what had just happened. He had come here to add one name to a list. Instead, he had given the galaxy a new way to think about death, memory, and what it meant to truly honor the past. 3 months had passed since Jake raised his hand in that great chamber. Now he sat behind a desk in an office that still felt too big for him. Through the massive window, he could see Earth's newest spaceport stretching toward the horizon. Ships from dozens of different species landed and took off every hour, bringing scientists who wanted to learn human archaeological methods. Jake's official title was Director of Galactic Archaeological Sciences. The nameplate on his desk was written in 17 different languages, including 3 that humans could not pronounce. He still could not believe that he, a junior diplomat who had been afraid to speak up in meetings, now led one of the most important new departments in galactic history. His assistant, Amy Collins, knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission. She had been working with Jake since the department was created, and she was one of the few humans who understood how big this had all become. "Sir," she said, setting a tablet on his desk, "we have received 3,847 new requests for archaeological surveys this week. The Galactic Council is asking if we can establish training programs to teach our methods to other species." Jake picked up the tablet and scrolled through the requests. Each one represented an extinct species that some civilization wanted to learn more about. The Zentari wanted help with the crystal singers. The Vorthak needed assistance studying the first hive remains. The aquatic domains had sent samples from 3 different extinct cousin species, but it was more than that. Jake saw requests from species he had never heard of, from parts of the galaxy that Earth had not even known existed. Word had spread far beyond Unity Prime. Civilizations that had been isolated for thousands of years were reaching out, hoping that human methods could help them understand their own lost peoples. "How many teams do we have ready to deploy?" Jake asked. Amy consulted her notes. "Dr. Peterson is leading the expedition to the Crystal Singer homeworld. Dr. Martinez has a team studying Vorthak hive structures. Dr. Johnson is working with the aquatic domains on vocal reconstruction. We have 12 other teams in various stages of preparation." Jake smiled as he thought about how excited his colleagues had been when they learned about this opportunity. Earth's best archaeologists, anthropologists, and geneticists had volunteered immediately. For them, this was not just a job. It was the chance to study forms of life and culture that had never existed on Earth. Dr. Peterson had been especially thrilled. Her team had been on the Crystal Singer homeworld for 6 weeks now, using ground-penetrating radar and chemical analysis to map ancient settlements. Just yesterday, she had sent a report showing that the Crystal Singers had not just made music. They had built entire cities designed to amplify and focus sound waves. "What about the training programs?" Jake asked. "That is where things get complicated," Amy said. "We have over 200 species requesting training, but our methods require specific equipment and techniques that most aliens cannot use. Human hands are needed for delicate fossil excavation. Human eyes can see patterns in rock and soil that other species miss." Jake nodded thoughtfully. This had become one of their biggest challenges. Human archaeological methods had been developed specifically for human biology and human ways of thinking. Teaching them to beings with different senses, different hands, different brains was proving difficult. However, Amy continued, "we have had some success with hybrid approaches. The Zentari are excellent at chemical analysis because of their crystal-based biology. The synthetic collective can process data much faster than we can. The Vorthak have natural abilities for understanding group behavior patterns." Jake's communicator chimed with an incoming priority message. The symbol on the screen indicated it was from Director Vexithera at Unity Prime. "Jake," came the familiar wind chime voice through the translator. "I am calling with extraordinary news. The expedition to Kepler 442 has made a discovery that you need to hear about immediately." Jake felt his pulse quicken. Kepler 442 was home to the primitive builders, a species that had been extinct for 50,000 years. The human team there was supposed to be conducting a simple survey of their tool-making techniques. "What did they find?" Jake asked. "They are not extinct," Director Vexithera said simply. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" Dr. Rodriguez used human deep excavation techniques to search for primitive builder settlements. Instead of finding ancient ruins, she found active communities living deep underground. They have been hiding from surface civilizations for millennia, but they never died out. Jake stared at Amy, who had gone completely pale. "How many?" he asked. "Preliminary estimates suggest over 2 million individuals spread across the planet. They have maintained their traditional lifestyle, but developed advanced camouflage and concealment technologies. They chose isolation over contact with other species." Jake felt his legs go weak. This changed everything. If the primitive builders were still alive, how many other supposedly extinct species might actually be surviving in hidden locations? "Director Vexus Thara," Jake said carefully, "how many species on the extinction list have never been properly surveyed using human methods?" There was a long pause before she answered. "All of them," she said quietly. "Jake, we may have been wrong about extinction on a galactic scale." Over the following weeks, the results began pouring in from expeditions across the galaxy. Human archaeological teams were not just learning about extinct species, they were finding survivors. The deep swimmers of the aquatic domains were discovered living in ocean trenches, so deep that other species' sensors could not reach them. The song weavers of Rigel had retreated to asteroid colonies after their homeworld was damaged by cosmic storms. The memory keepers of Tau Ceti had been living in underground cities for 30,000 years, convinced that the surface world was too dangerous. Each discovery followed the same pattern. Species that other civilizations thought were dead had actually chosen isolation. They had used their intelligence and adaptability to survive in places where no one thought to look for them. Jake found himself at the center of the biggest revelation in galactic history. The universe was not emptying of intelligent life. It was full of hidden civilizations waiting to be rediscovered. But there was something else, something that made Jake even prouder of humanity than the archaeological discoveries. In every case where they found surviving members of supposedly extinct species, the human teams focused not on study or contact, but on protection. Dr. Rodriguez had convinced the Galactic Council to declare Kepler 442 a protected world. The primitive builders could continue their chosen isolation without interference. Similar protections were being established for all the rediscovered species. "We are not just finding the lost," Jake told the assembled Galactic Council during his monthly report. "We are learning to respect their choices. If they chose isolation, then isolation they should have. Our job is not to disturb them, but to honor them by ensuring their continued survival." Ambassador Kyleth's crystal formations glowed brightly as she responded. "Once again, humanity teaches us something we did not know we needed to learn. You show us that extinction may be choice, that isolation may be wisdom, and that true respect sometimes means leaving others alone." Jake looked out at the assembled representatives and felt a deep satisfaction. When he had raised his hand in that chamber months ago, he had just wanted to honor the Neanderthals. Instead, he had given the galaxy a new understanding of life, death, memory, and respect. The Neanderthals were still extinct. That had not changed. But their memory lived on not just in human genes and human knowledge, but in a galactic commitment to never let another species be forgotten. And perhaps more importantly, the discovery of hidden civilizations meant that extinction itself might be much rarer than anyone had believed. Jake smiled as he thought about how his grandmother would have reacted to all this. She had always told him that the most important thing in life was to remember where you came from and honor those who came before you. He had started by honoring his extinct cousins. Now the entire galaxy was learning to do the same. Jake Morrison sat in the biggest room he had ever seen. The walls went up so high that he could not see the ceiling. Around him sat creatures that looked like nothing from Earth. Some had 6 arms, others had no arms at all. Some breathed through their skin while others made musical sounds instead of talking. This was Unity Prime, the most important space station in the galaxy. Every 100 years, all the smart species came here for one big meeting. They called it the Galactic Census. Today they were talking about dead species, the ones that used to live but were gone now. Jake was new here. Earth had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago. Before that, humans did not even know other smart life existed. Now Jake worked as a junior diplomat. His job was to watch and learn. He was not supposed to talk much. The meeting had been going on for 3 days. Jake heard stories that made his heart heavy. The tall blue aliens called Zentari talked about the crystal singers. These were beings made of living crystal who could make music with their bodies. When their sun died, they all turned to dust in one day. The Zentari still played recordings of their final songs. Then came the Vortek. They looked like giant insects but were very smart. They told everyone about the hive minds of Sector 7. These were creatures who shared one big brain across millions of bodies. A quantum plague hit them 50 years ago. It broke their shared thoughts. Without their connection, they all died within a week. Jake listened to story after story. The aquatic domains lost 3 species to cosmic storms. The Brutari Warcast spoke about ancient enemies who fought until both sides were gone. Every tale was the same. Someone used to live, and now they did not. The being in charge was called Director Vexathera. She was twice as tall as Jake and had skin that looked like green glass. Her 6 arms moved as she talked, pointing to pictures in the air. She had been alive for over 800 years and had seen many species disappear. The universe is vast, Director Vexathera said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. But life is precious. We gather these names so they will not be forgotten. Every species that dies takes unique knowledge with them. We must honor their memory. Jake looked at his small tablet. On it were notes about all the dead species. So far they had added 247 new names to the list. Some died from war, others from sickness or natural disasters. A few just could not adapt when their worlds changed. Ambassador Kyleth of the Zentari stood up. She was beautiful in a strange way, with crystal formations growing from her blue skin. We must remember that extinction is final, she said. When a species dies, everything about them dies too. Their art, their science, their way of seeing the universe, all gone forever. General Thok of the Brutari banged his massive fist on his chair. The sound echoed through the huge room. The Brutari looked like bears that could walk on 2 legs, but they were much bigger and had sharp teeth. This is why we must be strong, he growled. The weak die. The strong survive. It has always been this way. The aquatic domain's representative made a sound like waves on a beach. Through the translator, her words came out soft and sad. Strength alone is not enough, General Thok. The deep swimmers were the strongest in our seas. They could crush ships with their bare hands. But when the temperature changed by just 2 degrees, they all died. Sometimes being strong is not what matters. Jake thought about Earth while he listened. Humans were not the strongest or the smartest species here. They were not the oldest or the most advanced. Earth was a small world far from the center of galactic civilization. Most of the aliens here had been traveling between stars for thousands of years before humans learned to make fire. But humans had something different. Jake was not sure what it was yet. He just felt it when he heard all these stories about dead species. Other aliens seemed to accept that extinction was normal. They were sad about it, but they thought it could not be stopped. Director Vexathera raised her 6 arms for silence. The room became quiet. Even the creatures who made humming sounds instead of breathing stopped their noise. We have heard from all member species, she announced. The registry is nearly complete. Before we close this session, I ask one final time. Does anyone have additional names to add to our list of extinct civilizations? The silence stretched on. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Around him, hundreds of different aliens sat still. Some had multiple eyes that blinked in patterns. Others had tentacles that swayed slowly. A few were just floating clouds of gas inside clear containers. Jake felt something stirring in his chest. It was not fear exactly, but it was close. He thought about all the stories he had heard. Every single tale was about aliens who studied other aliens. They knew about extinct species because they had met them before they died, or because they found their empty cities and broken ships. But humans were different. Humans knew about extinct species in a way that no one else in this room could imagine. They knew about beings who had been gone for thousands of years before humans even existed. They knew their names, their lives, their thoughts, and their dreams. Jake looked around the massive chamber one more time. Every alien here was ancient and wise compared to him. They had seen things he could not imagine. They had knowledge that went back millions of years, but they did not know what humans knew. Jake raised his hand. The movement was small, but in the silent room, it seemed huge. Hundreds of strange eyes turned to look at him. Director Vexathera's crystalline face showed surprise. General Thok made a sound like a growling laugh. "Yes, Human Morrison?" Director Vexathera said. Her voice carried curiosity and something that might have been amusement. "You wish to speak?" Jake stood up slowly. His legs felt shaky, but his voice was steady. "I would like to add a species to the extinct list." The reaction was immediate. Creatures throughout the chamber began making their various sounds of confusion. Clicks, whistles, harmonic tones, and electromagnetic pulses filled the air. The translator system struggled to keep up with so many different types of communication happening at once. Ambassador Kyleth leaned forward, her crystal formations catching the light. "Human Morrison," she said carefully, "your species has only been part of our community for 5 years. Your world shows no evidence of hosting multiple sapient species. How could you possibly know of an extinct civilization?" Jake felt the weight of every gaze in the room. This was the moment that would change everything, though he did not know it yet. He was about to give the galaxy something it had never seen before, a human perspective on what it meant to remember the dead. The silence in the great chamber felt heavy like a thick blanket. Jake could feel his heart beating fast as hundreds of alien eyes stared at him. Some of those eyes were huge and black. Others were tiny and scattered across strange faces. A few aliens did not have eyes at all but seemed to sense him in ways he could not understand. Director Vexithera moved her 6 arms in a pattern that meant she was thinking hard. Her green crystal skin caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the walls. "Please state the name of this extinct species, Human Morrison," she said. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the doubt in it. Jake took a deep breath. He thought about all the books he had read as a child. He remembered the museums he had visited and the documentaries he had watched. Most of all, he thought about the respect humans had for those who came before them. "The Neanderthals of Earth," he said clearly. The reaction was instant and loud. The chamber exploded with noise. Creatures began talking, clicking, humming, and making sounds Jake had never heard before. The translation system started making weird beeping noises as they tried to handle so many different languages at once. General Thok of the Brutari stood up so fast his chair fell backward. His bear-like face showed complete confusion. "What nonsense is this?" he roared. "We scanned your planet completely before first contact. There are no ruins, no destroyed cities, no signs of war or conquest. Your world has only one intelligent species." Ambassador Kyleth's crystal formations began glowing brighter, which Jake had learned meant she was excited or upset. "The general is correct," she said, her voice like musical notes. "Our surveys found no evidence of multiple civilizations on Earth. Your species shows no genetic markers of recent warfare against other sapients. There are no plasma burns on your continents, no orbital bombardment scars, no chemical weapon residue." Commander Zeph of the aquatic domains made a sound like whale song. Through the translator, his words came out confused and wet-sounding. "Human Morrison, our deep space sensors can detect the aftermath of species extinction from orbit. Dead civilizations leave traces that last for millions of years. Your world is clean of such markers." Jake nodded slowly. He had expected this reaction. "You are all correct," he said. "There are no signs of war or conquest on Earth. There never was a war between humans and Neanderthals." This made the noise even louder. Several aliens began making what Jake guessed were laughing sounds. Others seemed angry. A few just looked more confused than before. The synthetic collective's representative spoke next. It looked like a walking metal tree with lights instead of leaves. "Logic error detected," it said in a voice that sounded like a computer. "If there was no conflict, how can you claim knowledge of an extinct species? Species do not simply vanish without cause." Director Vexithera raised all 6 arms for silence. Slowly, the chamber became quiet again. "Human Morrison," she said, "you have made a claim that appears impossible by all known laws of xenoarchaeology. Either you are mistaken or you are deliberately misleading this assembly." Jake felt sweat on his forehead, but he kept his voice steady. "I am not mistaken and I am not lying," he said. "The Neanderthals lived on Earth for over 300,000 years. They were intelligent, they made tools, they had culture and language. They went extinct approximately 40,000 years ago." The Vorthak representative clicked his mandibles together rapidly, which Jake knew meant extreme agitation. "Impossible," the insect-like being said. "If this species existed for so long and then died, there would be archaeological evidence everywhere. Cities, monuments, industrial sites, waste deposits. Where are these things?" "They did not build cities like we do," Jake explained. "They lived in small groups, mostly in caves or temporary shelters. They made tools from stone and wood and bone. They hunted animals and gathered plants. They were intelligent, but they lived simply. General Thok made a sound like a bear coughing. Even simple species leave traces, he said. The primitive builders of Kepler 442 lived in wooden huts and used stone tools. We can still find their settlements after 50,000 years. If your Neanderthals were real, where is the proof? Jake smiled for the first time since standing up. This was the question he had been waiting for. We found them, he said simply. The chamber fell completely silent again. This time the silence was different. It was not confusion or disbelief. It was the silence of creatures trying to understand something that seemed impossible. Ambassador Kyleth leaned forward, her crystal skin almost touching the edge of her seat. "What do you mean, you found them?" she asked softly. "We dug them up," Jake said. "We found their bones, their tools, their living sites. We studied them for over 150 years. We know how tall they were, what they ate, how they lived, and how they died." The synthetic collective's lights began blinking rapidly. "Clarification requested," it said. "You are claiming your species can reconstruct extinct civilizations from archaeological remains alone?" "Not just archaeological remains," Jake said. "We extracted DNA from their bones. We know their genetic code. We can tell you about their diseases, their diet, even their family relationships. We know which ones were related to each other." Director Vexithera's 6 arms began moving in complex patterns. Jake had learned this meant she was either very excited or very upset. "Human Morrison," she said slowly, "what you are describing is impossible with standard galactic technology. DNA degrades completely within 1,000 years under normal conditions. Genetic reconstruction from 40,000-year-old remains would require quantum archaeology techniques that your species does not possess." Jake shook his head. "We do not use quantum archaeology," he said. "We developed other methods. We learned to extract genetic material from fossilized bones and teeth. We can read DNA that has been preserved in cold, dry conditions for tens of thousands of years." The noise in the chamber started again, but this time it was different. Instead of disbelief, Jake heard something that sounded like wonder mixed with fear. Commander Zeph made a series of bubbling sounds. "You are telling us," he said through the translator, "that your species can bring the dead back to life through pure scientific analysis." "Not back to life," Jake corrected, "but we can bring back their stories. We know how they lived and died. We know their culture, their art, their beliefs. In some ways, they are still alive in our knowledge of them." The chamber became so quiet that Jake could hear the hum of the space station's life support systems. He realized that every creature in the room was trying to process what he had just told them. Finally, General Thok spoke. His voice was much quieter than before. "Human," he said. "If what you claim is true, then your species possesses the most advanced archaeological capabilities in the known galaxy. You can resurrect entire civilizations from fragments of bone and stone." Jake nodded. "We can," he said simply, "and we do it to honor them. The Neanderthals were our cousins. They deserve to be remembered."